For weeks, the young son of a powerful billionaire, a 6-year-old boy who was born deaf and recently lost his mother, cried every single day without pause, and no doctor, no therapist, not even his wealthy father could find a way to reach him. Until one day, a new maid, hired only to clean the house, noticed something no one else had and made a simple gesture that would completely change all of their lives forever. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. In the large and expensive mansion owned by the Bennett family, everything was quiet, except for the soft and constant crying of a little boy named Ethan. He was only 6 years old, and for the past few weeks, he had been crying almost every day without stopping. No one in the house knew why. The maids whispered about it in the kitchen, the guards outside pretended not to notice, and even the family doctor looked confused. Ethan stayed in his room most of the time, holding a small blanket that once belonged to his mother. She had passed away a few months ago, and since then, Ethan had changed completely. Before, he smiled often, even though he couldn't hear anything. He had been born deaf, but he used to enjoy watching cartoons or drawing animals. Now he didn't want to play, eat properly, or even sleep well. The only thing he did was cry, quietly but endlessly, as the mansion remained filled with silence. Donovan Bennett, Ethan's father, was a powerful and wealthy businessman. He owned several companies, including tech firms and luxury hotels. His schedule was always full of meetings, flights, and phone calls, but lately his attention was divided. His son's strange behavior had taken over his thoughts. At first, Donovan thought Ethan would recover on his own, but after 2 weeks of nonstop crying, he realized something was seriously wrong. He hired the best doctors in the city. They ran tests and gave different opinions, but none of them found anything physically wrong with Ethan. Then came therapists. Child psychologists came to the house to try and talk to Ethan using drawings or toys. Still, the boy wouldn't respond. After that, Donovan brought in professional interpreters who knew sign language. But even with people who could understand him, Ethan refused to sign a single word. Donovan, who had always found solutions in the business world, now felt helpless inside his own home. The staff tried everything they could think of to help the boy feel better. The cook made his favorite meals, but he didn't eat them. The housekeeper brought him new toys and books, but he ignored them. One of the bodyguards even brought his dog to cheer him up, but Ethan didn't even look. Every room in the mansion was filled with beautiful furniture and expensive art, but nothing could fill the emptiness that seemed to grow inside Ethan. The boy spent most of his time by the window, staring at the garden without showing any emotion. Sometimes he would fall asleep sitting on the floor, hugging his blanket. When someone tried to take it from him to wash it, he would scream and cry harder. No one could comfort him. He didn't want to be touched. He didn't want to be spoken to. The silence of the mansion, once peaceful and elegant, now felt cold and heavy, as if it were holding a deep sadness that no one could escape. Donovan started to cancel meetings. He stopped traveling. His assistants were shocked. It was the first time in years that Donovan ignored his work. He spent more time at home, trying to be close to Ethan. But even Donovan, who had given his son everything money could buy, couldn't find a way to reach him. He sat beside Ethan, tried to sign simple phrases, or even just placed a hand on his shoulder. But Ethan pulled away every time. Donovan felt a pain he didn't know how to handle. His wife had been the one who knew how to talk to Ethan, how to comfort him. And now she was gone. Since her death, Donovan had thrown himself into work, thinking that was the only way to survive the grief. But now, with Ethan falling apart right in front of him, he realized how wrong he had been. His company was suffering too. Projects were delayed, deals were lost, but nothing mattered more than his son's silence. As the weeks went by, Donovan tried more unusual methods. He flew in a child behavior expert from Europe who'd worked with deaf children in war zones. She stayed for 3 days and observed Ethan. Her conclusion was simple, but hard to hear. Ethan wasn't sick, he was grieving. His mind had shut down communication as a form of protection. The expert explained that sometimes children deal with emotional pain in different ways. In Ethan's case, losing his mother had left him in deep shock. Donovan listened, trying not to break down. He remembered the way Ethan used to smile when his mother signed bedtime stories, or how he ran into her arms after school. Those memories now felt like dreams. Donovan realized that no team of specialists or amount of money could fix what had happened. What Ethan needed was time, love, and presence, not strangers trying to solve him like a problem. And so Donovan stayed home, fully, for the first time in years. Even with all the changes and effort, Ethan still didn't respond. His tears came less often, but his silence remained. The mansion, despite its size and beauty, felt like a cage. Every corner reminded Donovan of his wife and the life they had before. He started spending more time in Ethan's room, sometimes sitting for hours without saying anything. Occasionally he would read books out loud, even though Ethan couldn't hear them. He hoped his presence meant something, even if words didn't. And so, the days passed, slow and quiet. Ethan remained unreachable, locked in his own world. Donovan, once the man who had everything, now found himself powerless, but he refused to give up. Deep down, he believed that someday, somehow, Ethan would come back. For now, all he could do was wait, stay close, and try to give his son the one thing he had failed to give before, his full attention. And still, the mansion stood in silence, with Ethan crying softly for reasons no one could understand. Amara was cleaning the toy room like she did every Tuesday morning. The floor was covered in building blocks, tiny cars and stuffed animals. It was always a mess, but she didn't mind. She liked this part of the house. It was colorful and full of memories, even if most of them were sad lately. Ethan had spent less and less time playing since his mother passed away. As Amara moved around the room with her cleaning cloth and bucket, she heard the familiar sound of crying. Ethan was in the corner, sitting on a small beanbag with his arms around his stuffed bear. But this time, Amara noticed something different. The sounds coming from him weren't just random sobs. There was a pattern, short bursts, then pauses. His shoulders moved with rhythm, almost like he was repeating something. She stood still for a moment, holding the wet cloth in her hand. For some reason, it felt like Ethan wasn't just crying. He was trying to communicate something. Amara tried not to disturb him as she quietly continued wiping the shelves, but she kept watching him out of the corner of her eye. The same crying sounds repeated again, in the same order. Ethan's hands moved too, not in a playful way, but in small, chaotic gestures that looked like they had meaning. He shook his head, then waved his hands, then touched his chest. He kept doing it. Amara's curiosity grew. She didn't know much about sign language, but something about those movements seemed familiar. Then she remembered a girl from her old neighborhood, a deaf girl who used to play with her younger sister. That girl moved her hands in similar ways when she wanted to talk. Amara hadn't thought about that in years. She didn't know any formal signs, but maybe she could try something simple. She took a deep breath and stepped a little closer to Ethan, making sure not to move too fast and scare him. As soon as she got closer, Ethan pulled his bear tighter and leaned away from her. His body tensed, and his hands moved faster, more confused now. His eyes were wide, filled with fear, or maybe frustration. Amara froze. She didn't want to make it worse. Slowly, she crouched down to his level and smiled softly. She didn't speak. Instead, she lifted one hand and made a small, slow motion, something she remembered from her childhood. It meant hi. It was just a wave, done with calm and care. Ethan stopped moving. His mouth stayed open, like he had been about to cry louder, but no sound came. His eyes focused on her hand, then her face. For a few seconds, the room was completely still. No crying, no noise from the hallway. Nothing. Amara didn't speak. She just waited. Ethan looked at her, breathing heavily, and slowly lowered his hands. He didn't wave back, but he didn't turn away either. That was enough for her to stay. Amara sat cross-legged on the carpet, leaving space between them. She didn't want to pressure him. She looked around and picked up a small plastic animal. It was a lion. She held it up and gently pushed it across the floor toward him. Ethan didn't reach for it, but his eyes followed the toy. Amara smiled again and pretended to make it roar. She didn't say the word. She knew he couldn't hear, but she used her hands to act it out. Ethan didn't laugh, but he blinked slowly and hugged his bear tighter. Amara tried again. She picked up a second toy, this time a blue car, and rolled it next to the lion. Ethan's head moved slightly, watching the interaction. His hands twitched again, making small signs. Amara didn't know what they meant, but she nodded anyway. "I see you," she whispered, even though she knew he wouldn't hear. It didn't matter. The important thing was that he saw her, and maybe, just maybe, he understood her effort. After a few minutes, Ethan pushed the lion back toward her. It was a small action, but for Amara, it felt huge. She smiled again, trying to stay calm. Inside, she was excited. She had seen something important. Ethan wasn't completely closed off. He had reacted to her, and even responded in his own way. She wanted to do more, but she also didn't want to push too hard. Instead of talking or moving closer, she just stayed seated and started placing a few toys in a circle, like a game. Ethan watched her. His expression didn't change much, but he didn't cry again. Amara thought back to the way he had been crying earlier. Those strange patterns and repeated sounds. Maybe those weren't just sadness. Maybe they were attempts to speak in the only way he could. For the first time since she had started working there, Amara felt like she had found a way in, not through words, but through patience, play, and careful attention. She stayed in the room for a while longer, not cleaning anymore, just sitting and playing quietly near him. Every so often, she would glance at him and try another simple hand gesture. Sometimes Ethan would twitch his fingers like he wanted to respond, but he didn't fully react again. Still, the important part had already happened. The moment when he had stopped crying, that tiny break in the pattern felt important. It was like the beginning of something new. When Amara finally stood up to leave, she looked at Ethan and smiled one last time. She made the same simple hand gesture. "Hi." Ethan didn't wave back, but his eyes followed her as she walked out. There was no crying, no hands moving wildly, just quiet. For Amara, that silence wasn't empty. It was filled with meaning. As she walked down the hallway, she felt a strange mix of hope and responsibility. Back in the toy room, Ethan sat holding his bear, the silence around him no longer heavy, but sacred. It was the first step of a connection. In the days that followed her first interaction with Ethan, Amara couldn't stop thinking about him. Something had changed inside her after that moment. She felt a need to help him, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because she had seen something in his eyes. A need, a silent cry for connection. After her shifts ended, she began watching videos on her phone about basic sign language. At first, it was confusing. Her hands moved awkwardly, and she had to rewind the videos many times. But slowly, she began to understand the basics. Simple words like hello, happy, sad, and thank you. While she cleaned different parts of the house, she would quietly repeat the signs, sometimes in front of a mirror or while organizing toys. Ethan often watched her from a distance. His eyes would follow her hands, and sometimes he would pause whatever he was doing, showing just a bit of curiosity. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Amara didn't push him. She let Ethan take the lead. Every day she greeted him with a simple sign, followed by a gentle smile. Sometimes he would turn away. Other times he stared, not saying anything. but she noticed that he cried less often when she was around. The toy room became their usual place. Amara made sure to clean it slowly, giving them both time to be in the same space. She started using signs like eat, play, and sleep, always showing them clearly and calmly. One afternoon, while organizing a shelf, Amara saw Ethan sitting on the floor again with his bear. She sat a few feet away and looked at him carefully. Then she signed a question. Sad. She didn't expect a reply. But something unexpected happened. Ethan slowly raised his hands. They trembled, but there was a pattern. Amara watched closely. His fingers shook in a way that looked familiar. Then he looked at her with wet eyes and held the gesture for a moment longer. At first, Amara wasn't sure what he meant. She didn't recognize the sign exactly. But then she remembered one of the lessons she had watched online. She replayed it in her mind. The sign for mother. Her eyes widened slightly. She looked at Ethan again, and his hands were still moving softly. He wasn't speaking with words, but he was saying something very clear. Amara nodded slowly and signed back. Mother? Ethan blinked and pointed across the room. There was a wooden bookshelf near the corner, filled with puzzles and books. He pointed to the second shelf. Amara walked over carefully and saw a small photo frame lying face down between two books. She gently picked it up and turned it around. Inside was a photo of a woman smiling warmly. Her hands were lifted in a sign, frozen in a moment of communication. Amara looked at Ethan, then back at the picture. It didn't take her long to understand who it was. That woman was Ethan's mother. Amara sat down beside Ethan again, holding the photo frame in her hands. She showed it to him gently, not forcing anything, just letting him look, his eyes focused on the picture. He didn't cry this time, but his lips pressed together tightly. Amara could tell he was feeling something deep. She didn't say a word. She just placed the photo in front of him and signed Mother again. Ethan nodded very slowly. Then he signed it too, with a small, shaky movement. Amara realized then what the problem really was. Ethan wasn't just sad about his mother being gone. He was terrified he would forget how she talked to him. The gestures, the expressions, those were his memories of her. Without them, she would slowly disappear from his mind. The crying, the silence, the frustration, it all made sense now. He wasn't just hurting because of the loss. He was losing the last way he had to feel connected to her. That truth hit Amara hard, and she swallowed back tears. After that day, Amara became more focused than ever. She spent every night learning new signs. She created flashcards, took notes, and practiced in front of her bathroom mirror at home. During work, she made time to sit with Ethan, even if it was just for a few minutes. Slowly, their communication grew. One day, she signed friend, and Ethan nodded. Another day, she signed miss you, and his eyes filled with tears. Sometimes he would sign back small things. Sometimes he would just hold his bear and look at her with a calm face. They didn't talk much, but something stronger was forming between them. Trust. Amara also started labeling objects in the toy room with small signs and pictures. Ball, car, book. Ethan began pointing at them, sometimes signing without being asked. It wasn't fast, and some days he still stayed silent, but he was trying. Amara wasn't just teaching signs. She was helping Ethan hold on to the only part of his mother he still had left. One afternoon, while they were both in the room again, Amara sat beside Ethan and signed, sad? He didn't cry this time. He didn't freeze. Instead, he looked at her, and his hands moved, trembling but sure. He signed Mommy. Then he pointed to the shelf. Amara nodded and picked up the photo again. She placed it gently between them. Ethan reached for it, touched the glass lightly, and smiled just a little. That small smile was more powerful than words. It was the first smile Amara had seen from him. She smiled back and signed, love. Ethan looked at her, then back at the photo. He didn't copy the sign, but he seemed to understand. In that moment, Amara realized how much pain he had been carrying. But now, he had someone to carry it with him. The photo stayed between them as they sat together in silence, no longer heavy or sad. Amara finally understood. The boy had been crying because he was forgetting how his mother spoke to him. Mr. Bennet stood by the hallway window, arms crossed, watching everything unfold from a distance. He didn't like what he was seeing. The housekeeper, Amara, was spending more time with his son than anyone else. She wasn't a therapist or a doctor or someone with a professional background. She was just the cleaning lady. In his opinion, this situation had gone too far. He believed it was wrong for her to be involved in Ethan's recovery. After all, he had paid for the best experts. He had hired people with degrees, certifications, and experience. None of them had helped, and now this woman, who earned less in a month than he spent on a single dinner, was acting like she knew what the boy needed. He didn't trust it, he didn't understand it, and it made him angry. From his office, he had watched Ethan spend time with Amara, and while part of him felt curious, the larger part felt irritated and confused. He didn't want her interfering anymore. But that night, something happened that no one expected. The house was quiet after dinner. The staff had gone home, the lights were dim, and everything seemed calm. Mr. Bennet went upstairs as usual and checked Ethan's room before going to bed. He didn't expect anything different, but when he opened the door slightly, he froze. Ethan was lying in bed with his eyes closed, hugging his teddy bear. The blanket was pulled up to his chest, and there were no signs of distress, no tears, no tossing and turning, no crying sounds. It was the first time in weeks, maybe even months, that Ethan had fallen asleep peacefully. Mr. Bennet stood in the doorway for a long moment, unsure of what to do. He didn't want to wake the boy, so he quietly closed the door and walked back down the hall. His mind was racing. What had changed? Why tonight, of all nights? He had to know what Amara had done differently. He needed an explanation. The next morning, before the household got busy, Mr. Bennet called Amara into his study. She entered the large room nervously, wiping her hands on her apron. She had never been called there before and didn't know what to expect. He looked at her seriously and asked, "What did you do?" At first, Amara didn't understand what he meant. He repeated the question, more sharply this time. "What did you do to make Ethan sleep?" Amara explained calmly. She said she hadn't done anything magical. She had simply spent time with Ethan. She told him about learning a few signs, about letting the boy lead, about listening with her eyes and heart. Mr. Bennet looked unconvinced. He interrupted her and said, "That's not therapy." She nodded, but added something that made him pause. "Sometimes, children don't need treatment. They need connection. Ethan needs someone who speaks the language of the heart." Mr. Bennet sat back in his chair. He didn't reply right away. He didn't know how to respond to something like that. He brushed off her words with a quick nod and told her she could go. Amara left the study feeling unsure if she had said the right thing. Mr. Bennet, now alone, stared out the window, still not understanding. The phrase repeated in his head, "the language of the heart." What did that even mean? He had never believed in that kind of talk. In his world, everything had a price. Problems had solutions. Money fixed things. That was how he had built his empire. That was how he had survived after losing his wife. He paid people to handle his emotions, his son's problems, the household's needs. Now someone was telling him that all of that didn't work, that a cleaning lady with no degree had done more for his son than experts. It didn't make sense. But later that day, when he passed by the toy room and saw Ethan smiling, actually smiling, something inside him stopped. Ethan was holding a toy lion and looking directly at Amara. That moment hit him hard. It was the first real smile he had seen on Ethan's face since the funeral. It wasn't big, but it was real. His eyes were brighter, his shoulders more relaxed. He looked like a child again. Mr. Bennett stood by the door, watching quietly. Neither of them saw him. Amara was making simple signs, and Ethan was watching her hands carefully. He was copying her now, trying to repeat what she was doing. There was a quiet rhythm to their interaction. No words, just hand movements and small facial expressions. Mr. Bennett didn't understand any of it, but he didn't need to. He could see that something meaningful was happening. His son was coming back to life, piece by piece. And it wasn't because of money, or therapy, or fancy tools. It was because someone had given him attention, patience, and time. For the first time in a long while, Mr. Bennett felt something break inside him. He felt helpless, but also strangely hopeful. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stayed in his room, sitting on the edge of the bed, thinking. He remembered how he used to ignore his wife when she signed to Ethan. He always said he was too busy to learn. He thought it was her job to handle those things. Now, she was gone, and he had no idea how to reach his own son. He thought about everything Amara had said. He had laughed at her words earlier, but now they made sense. His money had bought experts, medicine, and comfort, but not understanding, not connection. He realized now that he didn't know how to listen, not just with ears, but with attention, with care. That was something money couldn't buy. As the house went quiet, Mr. Bennett made a quiet decision. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt it inside. He had to learn. Maybe not overnight, and maybe not perfectly, but he had to try. For Ethan, because for the first time, the man who had everything realized he didn't know how to truly hear. The next morning, Ethan behaved differently. From the moment Amara entered the toy room, he kept pointing toward the hallway. At first, she thought he wanted to go play outside or maybe visit the kitchen, but he was very clear with his hand gestures. He wasn't just pointing randomly, he was trying to say something. She followed him as he moved through the hall, past the staircase, and toward the closed door of Mr. Bennett's office. Ethan stood in front of it, tapping the wood gently, then looked up at her. She crouched down beside him and asked softly, "What is it?" using a few signs. He responded with a gesture that she didn't recognize at first. He brought his fingers to his eyes, then moved his hand outward, as if watching something. Amara blinked and repeated the sign. "Video?" she asked. Ethan nodded quickly. She was surprised. Why would he want videos from inside the office? It wasn't a place he ever visited, but something was clearly important to him. Unsure of what Ethan meant, Amara knocked on the office door. Mr. Bennett opened it, confused to see both of them there. Amara gently explained that Ethan wanted to watch some videos, and he was pointing specifically at the office. Bennett frowned, looked at Ethan, then back at her. His expression changed slightly, as if he remembered something. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked back to his desk and sat down, staring at the wall behind it. Amara stepped inside slowly with Ethan, who kept looking around the room, his eyes scanning the bookshelves and the large cabinet near the corner. Finally, Mr. Bennett spoke. "There are videos," he said quietly. "They're in the safe." Amara looked at him, surprised. "What kind of videos?" she asked. He hesitated. "Videos my wife recorded? For Ethan. She made them before she died. She used sign language. She wanted him to keep learning." Amara stood in silence. Then she asked, "Why haven't you shown them to him?" Bennett leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Because I thought it would hurt him more, watching her, hearing her voice, seeing her face. I didn't think he could handle it." Amara listened without interrupting. She looked at Ethan, who was now sitting on the carpet, still pointing toward the safe with hopeful eyes. She walked over to Mr. Bennett and spoke calmly. "He's asking for her. He remembers. Hiding this isn't helping him. It's making him feel more lost." Mr. Bennett looked down at his hands. "I thought I was protecting him," he muttered. but maybe I was just protecting myself. After a few seconds of silence, he stood up, walked over to the safe behind a painting, entered the code, and slowly opened the heavy door. Inside were several flash drives and DVDs in a small box, labeled with dates and titles like Ethan's First Signs and Good Morning Messages. He picked one up slowly and handed it to Amara. "We'll play just one," he said. They moved to the living room, where the large TV was mounted on the wall. Mr. Bennett connected the flash drive, and Amara helped find the right file. Ethan sat on the couch, eyes wide, hugging his bear. When the video started, the room fell silent. There she was, his mother, sitting in a bright room, smiling at the camera. Her hands moved smoothly, forming clear signs while her mouth silently shaped the words. Her face looked full of love. The video had simple music in the background, but Ethan didn't hear it. What he saw was enough. His eyes filled with tears as he stared at the screen. His small hands began shaking. Then he reached forward, gently placing his fingertips on the TV, right where her face was. He touched it as if he could feel her skin. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. Then slowly, a smile formed through the tears. It was a soft, broken smile, but it was real. Amara sat beside him, not saying anything. Mr. Bennett stood behind the couch, arms crossed, but not in frustration this time. He watched his son as emotions built up inside him. For weeks, he had seen Ethan cry without understanding why. He had blamed doctors, therapy, and even Amara. But now it was clear. The boy wasn't just sad, he was scared of forgetting the one person who had always spoken to him, always made him feel understood. Those videos weren't just recordings, they were memories, lessons, and love saved in a digital form. And Mr. Bennett had locked them away, not because he didn't care, but because he thought silence was safer than pain. But he was wrong. Watching Ethan now, he realized how much his son needed this. Not protection, not distance, just a way to feel close to his mother again. He sat down on the edge of the couch and placed a hand gently on Ethan's back. The boy leaned into him slightly. It was the first time they'd sat that close in weeks. They let the video play to the end. Ethan didn't take his eyes off the screen once. When it finished, he looked up at Amara, then at his father. He didn't speak, but his expression said everything. He was grateful. Mr. Bennett wiped his eyes quickly, trying not to let the others see. He looked at Amara and nodded, a quiet way of saying thank you. That moment changed everything for him. All this time, he had believed love had to be hidden to protect someone from hurt. But love, even painful love, was never the enemy. The real danger was trying to erase it. He had been wrong to lock away those videos. Wrong to think that grief should be silent. Ethan needed to remember. He needed to see, to feel, to hold on. That day, Mr. Bennett understood something he hadn't before. Hiding love doesn't protect anyone. It only creates more distance. And finally, he saw clearly that hiding what mattered most had been the real mistake all along. Amara had been feeling strange for days. It started with small things, getting dizzy when she stood up too quickly, feeling tired even after sleeping, or losing her appetite without knowing why. At first, she thought it was just exhaustion from working too much. She didn't want to complain, especially now that Ethan was finally happy again. The boy had stopped crying. He smiled more, played more, and followed her everywhere she went. He would sit near her when she cleaned, hand her toys to put away, or tug at her sleeve when he wanted attention. He didn't like to be far from her, not even for a few minutes. Amara could feel how much he trusted her, and that made her ignore her own pain. Every time her head spun or her vision blurred, she told herself she was fine. She didn't want Mr. Bennett to worry or think she couldn't handle her job. So she kept smiling and stayed close to Ethan. Ethan's change was obvious to everyone in the house. The boy, who once cried endlessly, now laughed silently, using his hands to communicate more than ever. He showed Amara his drawings, asked her to help him with signs, and even taught her some new ones he remembered from his mother. The mansion, once heavy and silent, now felt alive again. Mr. Bennett noticed it too. He often stood by the doorway, watching them together. He saw how Amara's patience and kindness had brought his son back to life. The difference was impossible to ignore. Ethan trusted her completely, and in some way, so did he. Mr. Bennett began to depend on her presence as well. The house didn't feel the same without her quiet energy. He told himself she was just an employee, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. Amara had become the heart of the house, the connection between father and son that he had failed to create on his own. Still, Amara's health kept getting worse. Some mornings, she could barely stand when she woke up. Her hands trembled while folding clothes, and sometimes she felt her chest tighten painfully, but she hid it well, forcing a calm smile whenever Ethan was near. One afternoon, while they were building a small puzzle together, Ethan noticed her hand shaking. He stopped and touched her wrist gently, signing, "Sick?" She shook her head and smiled, signing back, "Just tired." Ethan frowned but didn't push further. Mr. Bennett, however, had begun to notice too. He saw the way she sometimes leaned against the wall when she thought no one was looking. He saw the color drain from her face when she stood up too fast. He wanted to ask, but she always seemed busy, always brushing it off with the same excuse. "I'm fine." Yet something about her eyes told him she wasn't. He decided he would talk to her soon, but soon came faster than expected. That evening, while Amara was cleaning the hallway near Mr. Bennett's office, everything happened at once. She reached up to dust a shelf, and suddenly, her legs gave out. A sharp pain shot through her chest, and her vision went black for a moment. She tried to grab onto the wall, but lost her balance and collapsed. The sound of the bucket hitting the floor echoed through the hall. Mr. Bennett rushed out of his office just in time to catch her before she hit the ground. "Amara!" he shouted, holding her up. Her face was pale, her breathing uneven. She tried to speak, but couldn't. He called for help immediately, yelling for the driver to start the car. Ethan appeared at the end of the hallway, frozen with fear. His eyes were wide, and his small hands began to shake. Amara reached out toward him weakly, whispering, "It's okay," before she fainted completely. Within minutes, they were on their way to the hospital. The waiting room felt endless. Mr. Bennett paced back and forth, unable to sit still. Ethan sat quietly beside him, hugging his teddy bear tightly. Hours passed before a doctor finally came out with a serious expression. Mr. Bennett walked over, his stomach sinking. The doctor spoke gently but clearly. The words felt like a blow. "It's cancer, advanced stage." For a few seconds, he didn't process what that meant. Then the doctor explained. Amara had been sick for months without treatment, and the disease had already spread. Mr. Bennett felt a rush of guilt. How could he not have noticed? She had been taking care of his son, taking care of their home, while her body was falling apart. He sat down heavily, rubbing his forehead. Ethan looked between the adults, confused by their expressions. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see the sadness on their faces. He tugged at his father's sleeve, signing quickly. "What's wrong?" Mr. Bennett couldn't answer. When Amara woke up later, she was in a hospital bed, weak but awake. Mr. Bennett sat beside her, his expression soft but filled with regret. Ethan climbed onto the chair next to him, holding her hand gently. The boy's eyes filled with tears. He didn't need anyone to explain. He could feel that something was wrong. The atmosphere around him was heavy. Nurses moved quietly, and his father's face looked different, broken, worried. Ethan started signing desperately, looking at his father. "Don't let her go," he repeated again and again, his hands moving fast, almost shaking. "Don't let her go, Daddy." Mr. Bennett turned away, tears welling up in his eyes. He reached for Ethan and pulled him close. Amara tried to smile, even though her eyes were tired. "I'm not going anywhere right now," she whispered softly. But everyone in the room knew that things had changed forever. For the first time, they were facing a new kind of pain, one they couldn't hide or fix with money. It was the beginning of a new fight. After receiving the diagnosis, Mr. Bennett made a decision right away. He wasn't going to let Amara die without doing everything possible to help her. He called his personal assistant that same night and gave clear orders. Find the best hospitals, contact top cancer specialists, and don't ask about the cost. The next morning, she was transferred to a private clinic in another city. Within hours, a team of experts had reviewed her case. Mr. Bennett spent the whole day on the phone, setting up appointments, transferring medical records, and arranging for experimental treatments. Some medications weren't even available in the country, but he made them arrive within days. Every waiting room felt like a test. He sat beside her while doctors came in and out, each one with different opinions and updates. He tried to stay strong, but the fear kept growing. For the first time, money didn't give him control. He was fighting time, and time wasn't something that could be bought. Despite her weakness, Amara never gave up on Ethan. Even during treatments, when she was too tired to sit up on her own, she would ask for a whiteboard to write signs or draw pictures for him. When she couldn't write, she used her hands, slowly and carefully, to teach him something new. Ethan visited her as often as he could. He would walk into the room carrying small drawings. Some were stick figures holding hands, others were full of bright colors and large hearts. Every time, he handed them to her with a big smile. Sometimes he wrote short notes with his limited writing skills. One of them simply said, "You are my joy." Amara kept those notes in a small box next to her hospital bed. She looked at them whenever she felt too tired or scared. They reminded her why she had to keep fighting. The bond between them had only grown stronger, and neither of them wanted to let go. Mr. Bennett stayed close through all of it. He rarely left the hospital, sleeping in a chair by the door or inside his car in the parking lot. He stopped checking on his businesses. His phone still rang, but he rarely answered. His world had become smaller, reduced to one hospital room, one sick woman, and one child who depended on her completely. At first, he thought he was doing it for Ethan, but slowly he realized that he needed Amara just as much. He had grown used to her presence, her voice, her calm way of handling things. When she smiled, it made things feel lighter, even in dark moments. Watching her interact with Ethan made him realize how much he had missed in life by closing himself off. Amara had opened something inside him that he didn't know was still there. The more time passed, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about saving her life, it was about saving their family. The treatments were difficult. Amara lost weight quickly, her hair started falling out, and she spent days in pain. But she didn't complain. She always asked how Ethan was doing, if he was eating, if he had done his drawing practice. One day, when she felt stronger, she asked for a mirror and tried to fix her scarf. "I don't want to scare him," she said. Mr. Bennett helped her, and for the first time, she let him. Their hands touched while adjusting the fabric, and neither of them spoke, but something shifted. It was a moment of quiet understanding. They were no longer just a sick woman and a worried boss. They were two people trying to hold something together for the sake of a child. Ethan came in that afternoon, carrying a paper heart and a new drawing of the three of them. He signed, "Family." Amara's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Bennett didn't look away. He signed the word back, slowly, learning one gesture at a time. Every week there were new tests. Some days the doctors looked hopeful. Other days they looked tired and unsure. Amara had to be moved again to another clinic for a specific treatment. Mr. Bennett spared no effort. He bought medical equipment, booked specialists from other countries, and even started reading medical journals himself, trying to understand everything. The bills were massive, but he didn't care. Hope came at a high price, but the emotional cost was harder to deal with. Every moment felt unstable. Every improvement brought relief, but it never lasted long. There were setbacks, infections, complications. At night, he sometimes sat in his hotel room crying quietly, afraid of losing the only person who had brought light back into their lives. He tried not to show Ethan his fear, but the boy could always sense it. Still, they all kept going. Amara, even through the pain, smiled for Ethan. Mr. Bennett held her hand when she was too weak to sit up. It became a daily fight against fear. Through all of this, Mr. Bennett watched his son grow stronger. Ethan was no longer the silent boy crying in a dark room. He was brave. He held Amara's hand, signed full sentences, and smiled even when he looked worried. His love gave Amara the strength to keep going. Watching them together reminded Mr. Bennett why he had started this journey in the first place, but it also showed him something deeper. Amara hadn't just saved Ethan. She had saved him too. She had taught him how to feel again, how to listen, how to care without hiding. Now he was terrified of losing her, not just for Ethan's sake, but for his own. The hope they had built came with a cost. It drained him emotionally, scared him daily, but he was willing to pay it, because he finally understood what mattered. And as Ethan continued to draw hearts and whisper, "Don't give up," Mr. Bennett held on to the one truth he now knew. Hope was expensive, but love was priceless. The days became a routine of hospitals, medicines, and quiet prayers. Each morning began with test results, followed by treatments that left Amara weaker. The doctors spoke in low voices, and the nurses moved carefully around her bed. But even with all the pain and exhaustion, Amara stayed strong. Whenever someone asked how she was feeling, she answered with a tired smile, "As long as I can move my hands, I can still talk to him." She meant Ethan. No matter how sick she felt, she always asked for him. Her body was tired, but her heart was still full of love. Each day, Ethan visited her with new drawings, pictures of houses, trees, stick figures holding hands, always with big red hearts. He signed messages like, "Miss you, love you," or "You're strong." Amara's eyes lit up every time. Those visits gave her strength. She lived for those moments. No treatment worked as well as seeing his smile. It was her reason to keep fighting. Ethan, though still very young, understood more than most children his age. He could feel that Amara was not getting better. The hospital smell, the tubes, the pale look on her face. He noticed all of it, but he never cried in front of her. He wanted to be strong like she was. Every day before visiting, he would draw something new. Sometimes it was a picture of the three of them together, Amara, Mr. Bennett, and himself. Sometimes it was just a big heart with his name signed at the bottom. He would walk into the hospital room, hug her gently, and sit beside the bed. There, he would show her the drawings and begin signing what each part meant. Amara would watch closely, nodding and smiling through her pain. She always responded, even if her hands moved slowly. To them, it wasn't just communication, it was connection. Words were no longer needed. Each gesture carried love. Each drawing became a message of hope. Mr. Bennett was always there, too. At first, he tried to manage things like he did with his businesses, making calls, organizing specialists, and pushing doctors for solutions. But as time passed, he realized he couldn't fix this with money. No deal could be made with life, so he changed. He started spending every moment with Amara and Ethan. He cancelled all meetings, left his company in the hands of others, and moved into the hospital room. He slept in chairs or on a couch, never far from her side. He helped her sit up, brought her water, and even helped adjust her blanket when she was too tired to move. The man who once ruled boardrooms now sat quietly beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a woman who had taught him how to feel again. Watching Ethan sign messages to Amara Mr. Bennet began learning more signs too. Slowly, silently, they were becoming a family. Not by blood, but by choice, by care, and by love. Amara noticed all of it. Even when her body hurt, even when she couldn't eat, she smiled at what she saw. She watched Ethan laugh while drawing. She watched Mr. Bennet gently carry him in and out of the room. She saw how much they had changed. And she knew it wasn't because of doctors or hospitals. It was because of love. A different kind of love. Quiet, strong, and unconditional. She remembered how things were before. The silence in the mansion. Ethan's cries. Mr. Bennet's cold distance. Everything had shifted. Now they were together, holding each other up. She was still sick, the cancer had spread, and the doctors were honest about her chances. But instead of fear, she felt peace. She had done something important. She had brought light back into a broken family. She had helped a child find his smile again and had taught a father how to love. For Amara, that meant more than any cure. It meant everything. Sometimes late at night, when the machines beeped softly and everyone was asleep, Amara would stay awake just to watch them. Ethan curled up in a chair, his small hands still resting on the bed. Mr. Bennet sitting nearby, his head leaning back, eyes closed from exhaustion. In those quiet hours, Amara would think about the journey. She had arrived at that house just to clean floors and dust shelves. She had never imagined she would become a mother figure to a grieving child or the emotional center of a family that had lost its way. But that's exactly what happened. And now, even though her time was running out, she didn't feel fear. She felt proud. She felt love. Her body might be weak, but her heart was full. She had left a mark, not with big actions, but with patience, kindness, and presence. And that, to her, was enough. Enough to say goodbye whenever the time came, with peace in her heart. Eventually, the disease continued to move forward. The treatment stopped. The doctors said there was nothing more they could do. But Amara didn't break. She stayed calm. She looked at Mr. Bennet and said softly, "Take care of him." He nodded, tears in his eyes. Ethan, sensing something had changed, signed, "Love you again and again." The room was filled with emotion, but it wasn't just sadness, it was also full of gratitude, because even though the end was near, the love they shared wasn't going anywhere. Amara had helped build something real, something that would stay. She had shown them what it meant to care without conditions, to be there even in the hardest times. And as she closed her eyes to rest, everyone understood the same thing. Love does not have to beat death to last forever. Sometimes love is strongest when everything else fades. And in that hospital room, between pain and peace, they learned that love, once shared, never truly disappears. Amara knew her time was getting shorter. The doctors had spoken gently, but clearly. There was nothing else they could do. Her body was tired, and each day she felt a little weaker. She didn't have much strength to speak anymore, and even moving her hands became difficult. Still, there was one thing she wanted before it was too late. She wanted to see Ethan one last time. She asked the nurse to call Mr. Bennet and tell him. Not later, not tomorrow. Now. When Mr. Bennet received the message, he didn't wait. He gently told Ethan, who didn't hesitate for a second. The boy picked up his small teddy bear, the one he always carried, and rushed down the hallway of the hospital. He didn't need help finding her room. His feet knew the way. As soon as he entered, he saw Amara lying on the bed, her face pale but smiling. Without a word, he climbed onto the chair beside her, hugging the bear tightly. Ethan held her hand as gently as he could. Amara opened her eyes slowly and looked at him. She gave a weak smile, and even though her body was failing, her expression was calm. She lifted her hands slowly, fingers shaking. Ethan watched every movement, already understanding what was coming. She signed slowly with great care, "When you miss me, look at your hands." Then she waited, took a breath, and continued, "They speak for us." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. His chin trembled, but he didn't look away. He nodded, then brought his hands up and formed the sign he had practiced so many times before. "I love you." Amara's eyes grew glossy. She nodded slowly and smiled. She touched the side of his face with her fingers, then closed her hand over his gently. For a few minutes, no one said anything. There was only quiet, but in that quiet, something important passed between them, a final message of love, comfort, and understanding. Mr. Bennett stood near the door. He didn't move or speak. His arms were crossed, but not out of anger. This time, it was because he was holding himself together. Watching the scene between Amara and Ethan made something shift inside him. He had seen many things in his life, business deals, boardroom fights, even funerals, but nothing like this. He was witnessing a goodbye that didn't need words. Amara, a woman he had once seen as just a housekeeper, had become the center of their lives. She had healed his son, taught him to feel, and built a connection between all three of them without ever asking for anything in return. Mr. Bennett's throat tightened. He had never said it out loud, but now he knew. This woman had become the heart of his home. The silence in the room wasn't empty. It was filled with everything she had given them. And as Ethan cried softly beside her, Mr. Bennett felt tears on his own face too. Time moved slowly after that. Nurses came and went quietly. The machines beeped in soft rhythms. Ethan stayed by Amara's side, not wanting to leave. He leaned on the bed, his small hand resting on hers, and held the teddy bear close to his chest. Mr. Bennett sat in the corner, staring at the floor, lost in thought. No one said much. There was no need. They all knew the moment was near. Hours passed and Amara's breathing grew softer. Her chest moved slower and her eyes stayed closed longer. But there was no panic in the room. It was quiet, peaceful. When she finally fell asleep, it was gentle. Her body didn't shake and there was no sudden sound. It was like she had simply drifted off into rest. The nurse came in later, checked her quietly, and nodded. Mr. Bennett stood, walked over, and placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder. The boy didn't say anything. He already knew. But he didn't scream. He didn't run. He stayed still. The hospital room felt heavy but not cold. Amara was gone, but what she had built was still there. Ethan turned to Mr. Bennett and wrapped his arms around him. The man knelt down and held him tightly, pressing his eyes shut. The two of them stayed like that for a long time. Later, Mr. Bennett helped Ethan pack up the drawings, the teddy bear, and Amara's box of little notes and letters. They took everything home. Back at the mansion, it felt strange at first. The rooms were quiet again, but not like before. This time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full of memory. Ethan placed the drawings on the wall near his bed. Mr. Bennett kept Amara's notes in a drawer in his office. They didn't talk much that night, but something had changed between them. There was a bond now, one that Amara had helped create. She wasn't there physically, but her presence still lived in everything they did. That night, Ethan sat in his room holding the teddy bear. He looked at his hands for a long time, remembering Amara's final sign. Then he slowly raised them and started signing by himself. First, "I miss you." Then, "Thank you." And finally, "I love you." He wasn't crying loudly. His tears came quietly, one by one. Mr. Bennett watched from the doorway, his eyes filled again, but he didn't interrupt. He let Ethan have that moment, because now he understood. Ethan wasn't crying in pain or confusion. This time he was crying because he had been loved deeply and fully. It was a goodbye filled with meaning, not emptiness. It was grief mixed with gratitude. Amara had given them something that would never leave, even in her absence. Love, once real, doesn't disappear. It stays in memories, gestures, and hearts. And on that day, Ethan's tears were not for loss. They were for love that had changed him forever. a love that, even in goodbye, remained. Months had passed since Amara's goodbye. Life inside the Bennett mansion had changed. The house was still big and quiet, but the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt meaningful. Ethan was different now. He still carried his teddy bear everywhere, but he didn't cling to it the way he once did. He had grown stronger. He used sign language with ease and helped others understand it too. Mr. Bennett had changed as well. The man who once only cared about business now spent his time doing something very different. He had started working on a new idea, a way to keep Amara's memory alive. He didn't want her love, her lessons, or her efforts to be forgotten. So he created the Amara Foundation, a place where families could learn sign language for free. He worked with teachers, therapists, and volunteers. His goal was simple: to help others build the kind of bond he had seen between Amara and Ethan, a bond built on patience, gestures, and love. The foundation took months to prepare. Mr. Bennett invested a lot, not just money, but time and emotion. He visited schools for the deaf, spoke with families, and listened to their stories. He wanted to understand their needs. He invited professionals who had worked with Amara's doctors to help design the classes. Some focused on teaching basic signs. Others were about emotional support and building better relationships between parents and deaf children. He made sure no one had to pay. It wasn't about business, it was about giving back. Mr. Bennett chose to launch the foundation in the same hospital where Amara had spent her final days. He thought it was the right place to begin something meaningful. On the day of the opening, the room was full. Families, teachers, nurses, and even some of the hospital staff who had once cared for Amara were there. The chairs filled quickly, and the room buzzed with quiet excitement. Everyone was waiting to see what the event would bring. Ethan stood near the front of the room, dressed in a clean button-up shirt and holding his bear close. He had insisted on bringing it. Amara liked it. He had signed earlier. Mr. Bennett stood beside him, dressed in a dark suit, a bit nervous but proud. He hadn't spoken in public since Amara's death, and this day carried a lot of emotion. When the time came to begin, a woman stepped forward to welcome everyone. She introduced the Amara Foundation, explained its mission, and then invited Ethan to come up and speak. The boy took a deep breath, looked at his father for support, and walked toward the center of the stage. A large screen behind him displayed his words in writing as he signed them slowly and clearly. She taught me how to speak with my hands. Dad taught me how to listen with my heart. Now, I want to teach the world how to hear the silence. The room went still for a moment. Then suddenly, the entire crowd raised their hands in the air and waved them silently, an applause in the deaf community. It was their way of showing deep respect and appreciation. Ethan smiled widely. He didn't need to hear the sound of clapping to know that people understood. The love in the room was clear. Mr. Bennett tried to stay composed, but his eyes filled with tears. He turned away slightly, wiping them before anyone could notice. But Ethan saw. He walked back to his father, took his hand and signed, "She would be happy." Mr. Bennett nodded, too emotional to answer. The event continued, with videos of Amara teaching signs, old recordings she had made, and testimonials from people who had met her. Many guests were moved to tears. Some parents stood in line after the ceremony to thank Ethan and Mr. Bennett personally. They said the foundation gave them hope. Others said they had finally found a way to connect with their children. In the following weeks, news about the Amara Foundation spread. Articles were written. Videos of Ethan's speech were shared online. People from different cities called, asking how they could join or help. Classes were filled quickly, and more volunteers signed up. The foundation became more than just a building. It became a movement. Mr. Bennett, once a man who avoided emotions, now spent his days answering letters from families and helping organize events. He even started taking sign language classes himself, not because he had to, but because he wanted to grow closer to Ethan and honor Amara's memory. At night, when the house was quiet, he often sat with Ethan and watched old videos of Amara signing. They didn't cry every time. Sometimes they just watched in silence, smiling. The pain of losing her hadn't gone away, but something stronger remained. Her presence could still be felt. In the way Ethan signed, in the way Mr. Bennett listened, in the way they continued forward together. Even though Amara was no longer physically with them, she was everywhere. She was in every lesson taught at the foundation. She was in every child learning their first sign. She was in every parent finally understanding what their child had been trying to say for years. Her voice, though silent, was louder than ever. Mr. Bennett saw that clearly now. And when he looked at Ethan standing proud, surrounded by people he had inspired, he realized that nothing Amara had done was truly gone. Her love was still living in them, still guiding them, still changing lives. The crowd gave one final silent applause, hands raised high. Ethan looked up, still holding his bear, and smiled at his father. Mr. Bennett placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "She's here." And he meant it, because even without sound, without movement and without words, Amara was still speaking, through every gesture, every smile, and every memory. Her love hadn't ended, it had only changed form, and it remained. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe until next time.